continuing on January 26, 2008, and we wanted to talk about your family again. How did you get along with your mother?
Not too well. Not too well. My mother loved my sister Hattie much more than she loved me.
Why was that?
Because I had a big mouth. And I didn't like her foods. And my mother and I were never on good terms.
So you were a tough daughter, huh?
I was a tough daughter, yeah. I answered back, and Hattie never answered back. She was very quiet. And I didn't like the way my mother cooked.
You didn't like her food?
I didn't like her foods. And my mother and I were never on good terms.
So you were a tough daughter, huh?
I was a tough daughter, yeah. Only when I got married, I realized what a mother was, and I really changed. She was very appreciative. I realized what a louse I was when I was home, and I made up for it. I was very good to her after I got married.
And then what was your relationship like with your father?
Oh, always good. He thought I was beautiful and smart, and everybody else was stupid. He said there was nobody as smart and as beautiful as I. And he told me that every day. I believed him.
On your next birthday, you know,
I'll be 90. I think I'll be 94.
No, you'll be 95.
95?
You were born in 1913.
Yeah.
2008.
Yeah,
You'll be
yeah.
95 on your next birthday.
Yeah.
All right, so we're going to ask you a few questions. Came to your neighborhood. The guy used to come around with a horse and light the candles every night at the street lights, right?
Right. It used to be so dark out there. And all of a sudden, the place lit up like... it was incredible.
And now, when you were born, basically there were horses and buggies in the street, right? And then what happened? There was a first car? I mean, tell us about the first cars that started coming by.
Well, when I was born, I don't remember when I was born, but I know there were no cars there. But when we moved to Harlem, cars first became...
available.
Yeah, you know, people were buying them, not as money, but once in a while you saw a car, and everybody would stare and look at it. It was just really it's an unbelievably amazing thing.
So Bubby had 3 girls, you, Hattie, and Lily, and Uncle Danny. Okay. Back when you and Grandpa first got married.
Yeah.
Right. So before refrigerators, before the real refrigerators,
No,
used to
they
be
had icebox.
you had ice boxes.
A man used to come with the ice on his back to put into the icebox.
Well, let's speak about a little bit about your life now. All right.
What about my life?
Well, when you were growing up as a kid, right? What
Yeah.
language they speak?
Yiddish.
Yiddish.
Yeah,
And-
I couldn't speak English
And
till I went into public school. In the first grade, I couldn't speak a word of English.
Wow.
They thought I just got off the boat.
And it must have been intimidating, right? Everyone spoke English pretty much in America.
No, most of the people spoke Yiddish. It was a very Jewish neighborhood.
In your neighborhood.
Yeah.
And what did they do for jobs? What did your father do for a job?
My father was a tailor. He always had a store.
And he owned a shop, right?
He owned a shop. And he had a lot of big shots who were his customers.
Oh, wow.
Used to come in and have their suits made by my father. He was an excellent tailor.
And what did your mother do?
She took care of the kids.
She was a housewife and she took care of the kids and made dinner and all that.
And you know, my father had a problem because that neighborhood where we lived in Harlem was mostly a Jewish and a German neighborhood. And this was at the time of the war. My mother, she used to...
During World War One, right?
Yeah, during World War One. And my father used to throw them out, used to pick up those son of a bees by their ass and throw them out of the store. They used to call him a Jew bastard, and you know all the words.
And where was your father's shop? Where was?
On 109th Street, between 3rd and Lex.
Okay, wow.
In Harlem.
Hello, my name is Amy Freeman, and I'm going to be asking my grandma some questions about her life. So, when was your first job?
My first job was when I was about 14 years old. I worked for an insurance broker. And the reason I left the job because he fired me. He caught me listening into the telephone conversation with his wife. He was getting a divorce, and I couldn't resist it. I listened into everything, and he caught me doing it. And he said, you're too nosy. I was nosy, it's true. I wanted to know what was going on. So he finally fired me. He was afraid I was going to give him away.
How much money did you make?
Not much. I used to make about $13 a week. That was a lot of money in those days.
So how did you meet Grandpa?
Then I met Grandpa. Oh, Grandpa was my girlfriend's boyfriend. The nearest girlfriend had a boyfriend, and it was Grandpa. Mm-hmm. And I was up in her house, and she said to me, Ann, look out the window. You see that guy coming up the street? He's coming up to visit me. He's my boyfriend. I said, gee, good-looking guy. What's his name? She said, his name is Hesh. 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 And he came up, and he said the minute he took a look at me, he fell in love. And I finally I lost my girlfriend because of him. She didn't like the idea that he was paying so much attention to me.
But what did Grandpa tell you when he first met you?
Huh?
When he made a prediction about the future, what did he tell you?
Yeah, he said, when we grow up, we're going to get married. I said, we're going to get married? I don't even know you. He said, well, you will. You will know me.
Why? Why?
Because he had a terrible temper. He didn't like, to the day he died, he was always very jealous. Mm-hmm. And he threw a couple of guys down a flight of steps. When they came to visit me in Harlem, we lived on the first floor. As he was coming into my house, they were going out. He said, what the hell were you doing in there? So they said, we went to visit in. He said, I'll give you a visit in. He took them by the ass and he threw them down a flight of steps. He did that twice. He threw down two boys. And then the word got around, stay away from her. Unless you want to get killed. Well, I was 21 when I got married. Mm-hmm. And Grandpa was 20. He's a year younger than I am.
Yeah.
And we had a very, very happy marriage. Really did have a happy, happy marriage. And I just loved him. He was just a wonderful husband, wonderful father.
Ask her about the height.
And he wanted to have children right away, but I wanted to wait a while. I wanted to enjoy a single life. And when we had our first child, I'll never forget that day when we had our first child. We had Arthur. He was an unusual child, unusual baby. When he was 2 years old, he spoke like a college professor. And he didn't like little children. He only liked adults. Didn't like kids couldn't talk. He was so bright, but he had a funny feeling about people. He didn't really like adults. Didn't like kids couldn't talk. He was so bright, didn't like people around, and he's that way to this day. Mm-hmm. Doesn't really like being with anybody. Likes being alone. Michael was very well loved by the tenants in the building because he was very social. Mm-hmm. He liked everybody. Mm-hmm. Arthur didn't like anybody. And Michael, he helped everybody. He walked with his wig until he saw a lady who was carrying a package, and he'd take her package in the wagon, and he would take her to her apartment. They all loved him to death. He used to have a little wagon, and he'd walk with his wagon until he saw a lady who was carrying a package, and he'd take her package in the wagon, and he would take her to her apartment. They all loved him to death.
Mm-hmm. And how about when you had Aunt Linda?
And then before I had Linda, I had a miscarriage,
mm-hmm.
which was a boy. So when I had Linda, all my girlfriends were looking out the window. We lived in a what do you call it?
Project.
A round building, and they
like a courtyard.
They all screaming, "Ooh, Ann had a girl," because they figured I couldn't have any girls. I had three boys mm-hmm. by that time. That I had a girl. I was thrilled to death. I couldn't get over the fact that I had a girl. I kept looking at her and wondering if she really doesn't have that thing.
So now when your family met Uncle Lenny, when was that?
Uncle Lenny lived in the same, right across the street from where we lived. And his mother was a very bossy woman. She had 3 sons, and they were scared to death of her.
And so when did he meet Aunt Lily? When did he meet your family?
And when we first met him, we all liked him because he was very polite, very mm-hmm. polite. Some of the boys were such monsters. Mm-hmm. And we really enjoyed him. And he really enjoyed my sister Lily. He really enjoyed being with her. Mm-hmm. She was really a doll. She was so sweet. She was such a doll. We just loved him. His mother didn't like him. Didn't like her. She didn't like me. She didn't like my whole family.
What about Bubby and Zadie? What did they think about Uncle Lenny?
They liked him. They liked him. He was very respectful. He was very nice.
So, Grandma, when was the first time that you guys met Uncle Bob, Hattie's husband?
First time I met him?
Yeah.
I don't know. I was about 15, I guess. 15, 16 years old. He came up to call for Aunt Hattie. And I met him in the hall first. And he says to me, "Are you Hattie's sister? Are you Hattie's sister?" I said, "Yes." He said, "How come she kept you a big secret?" And he tried to kiss me on the mouth. And I took my hand and I smashed him right across the mouth. I said, "Don't you dare do that again. I'm going to tell my sister." He said, "Please don't tell her."
Let's talk about some of the great world events you lived through. Like, do you remember the Roaring '20s, the 1920s?
I sure do.
And everyone was successful. Everyone was partying, and there was different.
Everybody was doing the Charleston, the Lindy Hop.
You have the Flappers.
The Flappers, yeah.
Are you one of the Flappers? Would you consider yourself one of the Flappers?
No. I wasn't one of the Flappers.
Okay. And then the Depression came in the 1930s, the Great Depression.
Yeah.
And then you knew Grandpa. You knew Grandpa during the 1930s, right? You were married then. During the Depression. Yeah. And how did the Depression affect you? How did it affect you and Grandpa personally?
Didn't affect us much because we didn't need any money. We used to have fun just hiking and talking and kissing and hugging. We didn't need any. We didn't go to the movies. Couldn't afford it. We never had any problem about the money.
Yeah,
we never really needed the money. We needed any money. We had each other.
I'll tell you, I just find it so amazing that, I learned this stuff in school. I learned about the Roaring Twenties and the Great Depression. And we talk about how long ago it was and how different it was back then. And I realized that you lived through all that stuff. You lived through these great, unbelievable events.
Yeah, of course. We didn't know that it was any different.
Oh, yeah, of course, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, the Great Depression was felt, though, and many people didn't have jobs.
Yeah, people jumping out of windows, jumping off roofs.
And what did Grandpa Harry do during the Great Depression?
He was in school.
He was still in school?
He was still in school.
Okay.
Yeah.
And let's talk about World War One. Remember World War One?
Yeah.
In Germany, and how'd your parents look? I mean, how was the people look at the Germans during the time? I mean, they started the World War One in a way.
We hated the Germans. We hated them from the very beginning. We hated them during the First War and the Second War. They were troublemakers, Jew haters, and we didn't like them at all.
Okay.
World War II.
I mean, do you remember Hitler and everything?
Yeah, of course I remember it all.
And they used to.
Oh, it was a terrible time.
Now, I know.
I had family in Poland.
And you had family in Poland then, right? You still had relatives.
We had some relatives, left in Poland.
I mean, were you afraid for them?
We never saw them again. My mother had a sister, I think. She had 5 daughters.
Right.
Lived in Germany someplace, and they were killed during the war. We never saw them.
What year about did you get your first television?
1940.
1940. And
we had the first television on the block.
Oh.
Nobody else had a TV.
Wow.
Everybody used to come to look at it and stare at it. It was just
unbelievable. Yeah.
It was unbelievable.
And it was black and white.
Black and white.
And how small and how big was the screen?
10-inch. A 10-inch screen.
Was it a channel?
How many channels?
How many channels?
Yeah.
There were about 4 channels.
4 channels.
Yeah.
Unbelievable.
And the waves were very big. Rockaway was very, very dangerous, actually. And it had jetties going into the water. Rocks, lines of rocks.
They still do.
Yeah, to divide the beach 1, beach 2. And Harry and I went into the water, and I couldn't swim. So he says to me, hold on to the ropes. Don't let go of the ropes. He went out for a swim. He said, and I'll pick you up on the way back. Well, unconsciously, I let go of the rope to scratch my face or my hair or something, and a wave came and threw me right up to the rocks, and they were full of moss. I tried to climb up on them. I couldn't. They were so slippery. And the lifeguards saw me, and they were swimming out to pick me up. And Daddy was coming back wondering what was going on. He couldn't know there was such a
Commotion.
Yeah, commotion. And my mother and father were standing on the beach, and my mother was tearing her hair out of her head. And they saved me, and they brought me back, and they had to pump my stomach. And Daddy almost passed out. He was so upset that he left me there, and this happened while he left me.
When Aunt Lily was a baby, tell us what happened when Aunt Lily was born. You were like 15 already, right? You were like a teenager.
When Lily was born?
Yeah, you were 16 years old.
No, I was 15.
15. So what was it like when Aunt Lily was born?
Oh, it was so thrilling. She was like my baby.
So Aunt Lily was, what kind of kid was she in high school? Didn't she like smoke and she was like, wore leather jackets and
She
stuff?
was terrible. She was incorrigible. The teachers all hated her guts. They couldn't stand her. And I had some of those teachers. They couldn't believe that I had a sister like that when I was so different.
Was she sort of like a juvenile delinquent?
Yeah, and she contradicted everything they said. She didn't believe a thing they told her.
Now, what did she dress like? She wore a leather jacket and smoked?
She didn't smoke. Not when she was that young. I don't know how she dressed. Anyway, they couldn't stand her.
I thought she dressed tough.
She dressed tough, yeah, but not leather jackets. We couldn't afford them in those days. She was tough. She talked tough, mostly. She wasn't so tough. She just talked tough.
Okay, and Aunt Lily was beautiful, right? So everybody must have loved Aunt Lily. She must have had the guys swarming around her like bees.
She wasn't beautiful, but she was glamorous, very glamorous.
Right.
And very snotty, too. She had a big mouth.
Yeah, that glamorous and snotty.
All the teachers hated her. I had more trouble. My mother couldn't go to school to talk to the teacher. She couldn't speak English. I had to go. They told me she was the rudest thing they ever saw. They can't wait to get rid of her. Well, that'll wait.
Now, Aunt Hattie, was she a sweetheart? She was a sweet girl? What was Aunt Hattie like?
She was the angel of the family, yeah. She was good. She did as she was told. I never did, but she did.
So in a weird way, you brought up your sisters, because if your mother couldn't speak English, every time the teachers called them in, you went.
Yeah, I had to go. There was nobody else to go.
And now your father, Reuben, owned a tailor shop, and he would work a lot, 6 days a week. How long did he work?
6 days a week until late at night, until 8, 9 o'clock at night.
Really? When did he start in the morning?
Early, started about 8 o'clock.
Wow, so 12 hours a day, 6 days a week, right? But he made a pretty good living.
Yeah, he made a living.
Right.
Yeah, we weren't starving or anything. Most of the people were.
Now talk about Uncle Danny a little bit. He was your kid brother, right?
No, Uncle Danny was a doll. He was my cousin.
No, he was your brother. Uncle Danny was your brother, not Uncle Dan.
No, not Uncle
So my
Danny.
mother did have an Uncle
Danny,
Dan.
yeah. Oh, my mother finally had a son. No,
Right.
don't ask.
Right, so Danny was your brother.
My father went crazy when
And he was a bit of a hoodlum, right? He was a little bit, what was Uncle Danny's story?
he wasn't really a hoodlum. He was. He used to let everybody get away with it. I used to have to fight all his battles. He never fought for himself. The kids used to beat him and kick him, and
He was an anti-hoodlum. I thought he was like a tough guy.
they knew me as the tiger lady, because when I found out that they hit my brother, I used to kill them. I used to beat them. I used to kick them. I used to bite them. I loved my brothers. Oh, I
So you were
adored him.
tough, basically. You think you could beat me in a?
Because my brother was being beaten.
You think you could beat me in a fight today?
No. No. Danny was always picked on because he was so mild. He was afraid of everything. And I couldn't stand them torturing him. So I used to go to bat for him.
But really, life is very good for us here in the 2008s. When you guys watch this in the 2208s, it might not be so good. You never know. All right. Love you all. Say bye.
Okay.
Okay, say bye-bye to everybody.
Goodbye, everybody.